A High Court judge has ruled that a PPE company linked to the Conservative peer Baroness Mone must repay the government almost £122 million for breaching its contract to supply 25 million surgical gowns during the coronavirus pandemic. PPE Medpro, a consortium led by Baroness Mone's husband, Doug Barrowman, was awarded contracts by the then Conservative administration. In June 2020, PPE Medpro was awarded a contract worth nearly £122 million, as we said, for the supply of 25 million surgical gowns to the NHS. The Department of Health and Social Care rejected the gowns that December, saying they didn't meet medical standards and many were not sterile. In October 2021, it was revealed that Baroness Mone had personally referred the company to the government, despite her claims that neither she or her husband had any connection to it. The following January, the House of Lords Commissioner for Standards launched an investigation into the relationship between Baroness Mone and PPE Medpro. That December, the government sued the company over the medical gowns, despite the company maintaining that they weren't responsible for the contamination. The trial began in June of this year. Neither Baroness Mone nor her husband, Doug Barrowman, gave evidence, though both denied any wrongdoing. And today, a High Court judge has concluded that PPE Medpro was in breach of its contract with the government and must pay back almost £122 million. Well, in a written statement, Mr Barrowman, a businessman who led the consortium, said, "Today, a travesty of justice took place following the judgment of Lady Justice Cockerell. She gave the DHSC, that's the Department for Health and Social Care, an establishment win, despite the mountains of evidence in court against such a judgment. Her judgment bears little resemblance to what actually took place during the month-long trial, where PPE Medpro convincingly demonstrated that its gowns were sterile. The judgment is a whitewash of the facts and shows that justice was being seen to be done where the outcome was always certain for the DHSC and the government. This case was simply too big for the government to lose." Our business and economics correspondent Paul Kelso joins us now. Paul, this is fascinating, isn't it, given that response from Mr Barrowman criticising the court where his wife actually sits in the highest court in the land. What has the reaction been of those who have been affected by this?
Yes, you're absolutely right to draw out that point. And Doug Barrowman, I think there, is accusing a High Court judge of engineering an establishment stitch-up to rule against the company that he put together, that his wife, Baroness Mone, ennobled by David Cameron after a successful career as a businesswoman, she introduced to the government's VIP fast lane, as it was known, for PPE procurement. She introduced using her contacts, including Michael Gove, who helped give her the right email address. For years, more than 2 years, both of them denied having any connection with the company, despite the fact many of the officers of the company, its directors, were the same as those as were directors of Mr Barrowman's companies. So it's safe to say this became the lightning rod for discontent over PPE procurement. We will recall the scramble for PPE, and then with the NHS unable to protect its staff as they were treating COVID, and then this rush to buy it from around the world ended up being a huge overspend by the department. This company became the lightning rod because of the profile of Baroness Mone, because of the denials that kept in the headlines. So the families of those who suffered and died during COVID are pleased with this outcome. The COVID families have said today it is welcome news that PPE Medpro has been ordered to repay £122 million after supplying millions of faulty PPE items that the NHS couldn't use. Profiting and corruption during the pandemic cost lives. Those responsible must be held to account. The question now of how they're held to account and where this £122 million will come from is moot and very relevant, because PPE Medpro was incorporated the day before Michelle Mone recommended it to government. It went into administration a few days ago before this adverse judgment, which leaves the question of recovering that money to the administrators of the company. And while Mone and Barrowman accused the government here of a stitch-up, which they would doubtless deny, there is a political element, with the Chancellor, no less, leading those welcoming this judgment. And we've just heard from Rachel Reeves. This is what she had to say.
I'm pleased that the High Court found in the government's favour and that Michelle Mone's company will need to pay back the £122 million that they got from the government. The previous government gave out contracts through a VIP lane, which we were very critical of at the time, and the PPE provided by that company was not up to the standards, and that's why we have pursued this in the courts to get the money back. I've been very clear for a number of years that money belongs in our public services, and we have done everything in our power to get that money back. Even before this judgment today, we had managed to bring back £400 million of taxpayers' money. There's another £122 million today. And I want to be clear, anyone who got a government contract, either during COVID or at other times, where the contract has not been fulfilled, we will come after that money. That is taxpayers' money and it belongs in our public services.
And how exactly are you going to get that £122 million they owe? Because the company's in administration, it doesn't have much money, it's been wound up. What legal course of action do you have to actually physically get that money? Well,
the government and particularly the Department of Health and Social Care will now work tirelessly to get that money back. I do think the fact that the company went into administration yesterday, the day before the High Court decision, tells you everything you need to know about the directors of that business. I would urge them now to do the right thing and to pay that money back.
And Baroness Mone says this is all just an establishment win, a stitch-up, an attempt to find a scapegoat. Is that fair?
Well, the former Conservative peer, Baroness Mone, complaining about the establishment when she got this contract through the previous government's VIP fast lane is a little bit rich. This is an independent decision from the High Court, and I'm pleased with their decision because they should never have got their hands on this money. And during the pandemic, people made huge sacrifices, separated from their families and loved ones, and yet at the same time, people like Michelle Mone and her company, her husband's company, profited on the back of that misery. I'm pleased that now the High Court have made that decision. We can get that money back.
Well, it's worth just saying, though, that £122 million is a lot of money, but it's piddling in comparison with the public finances. It's about the amount the government spends on debt interest every 9 hours. So even if you're going to get it back, it's not really going to fill the hole in your accounts. What plans do you have to do that?
We've already managed to get back £400 million of money. This is a further £122 million today. And of course, this is not the end of this government's efforts. I've always said that I want that money back. It belongs in our public services. And we will continue to work tirelessly to get back, to recover all the money lost to COVID fraud by the previous government.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
The question of where the money will come from now really is the live question and the important one. People will form their own views about the response of Michelle Mone and Doug Barrowman, this allegation. This is essentially an establishment stitch-up. They say that they proved their case in court when evidently, unequivocally, in the words of the judge and the judgment, they did not. The arguments boiled down to the contractual validity and standing of sterility standards. It's very, very complex and there was a great deal of argument, but the judge was very clear that the gowns that they provided did not meet the contractual obligations they'd agreed with the NHS. But given that company, PPE Medpro, is now in administration, just a couple of days before this judgment was reached, the question of where the money comes from is difficult to see. Now, one thing bearing in mind, just a few days before this judgment, PPE Medpro offered to settle with the Department of Health, offering £23 million effectively to make this judgment go away. The Department of Health refused, pushed forward to this point where it got a resounding win, but a spokesman for Doug Barrowman points out they've effectively lost access to that £23 million. And we've asked Doug Barrowman's spokesman if the £23 million was available before the judgment, is it available now? To which he has said the Department of Health will have to negotiate with the administrators, but the backers of PPE Medpro, that includes Doug Barrowman, have always tried to negotiate and they're happy to engage. So there's not a yes in there, but there isn't a no. But even if 23 million is available, that still leaves the Department of Health £99 million short on the money that was given to Michelle Mone's husband and the company he ran, PPE Medpro.